Hey, this is Rooo, and today I'm reviewing Mars Horizon. Mars Horizon is a turn-based space agency management and simulation game that was released in 2020. My review and footage are based on the PC version, however this game is also available for PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch. You start the game in January of 1957 as the head of one of 5 space agencies, representing the United States, the Soviet Union, China, Japan, and Europe. Throughout the game, you'll launch missions, build a base, and research technologies with the ultimate goal of being the first agency to establish a manned presence on Mars. The basic gameplay loop in Mars Horizon is pretty straightforward. You start the game with a basic mission unlocked, launching a sounding rocket, and research available to unlock more. Completing missions gives you research points and public support. Research points are used to unlock additional payloads, rockets, and buildings. Public support is tied to monthly funding, which you'll need to increase as the game progresses. As you would expect, late game payloads and rockets are far more expensive than those in the early game. Some missions give a direct cash reward, and those are usually worth doing since funding will likely be one of your main limiting factors. The first time you complete a mission, it is considered a milestone mission, and it will give additional rewards to the first, second, and third agency to accomplish it. Once completed, these missions can reoccur as either a request or joint missions with other agencies. Within each mission are a varying number of phases. A simpler mission will typically involve building the payload, designing and building the launch vehicle, which is broken into an upper and lower stage, and scheduling and launching the rocket. If this sounds complicated, it's really not. The game does a good job of walking you through the steps and will stop you from some obvious mistakes, such as setting up a rocket incapable of meeting mission parameters. Some missions have additional stages beyond launch, such as performing an EVA or mid-mission maneuvering correction. These are done via mini-games in which you have to balance and exchange various different resources to meet an objective. We'll talk more about these mini-games later. Both payloads and rockets have reliability. Launch reliability affects the likelihood of successful launch and can be affected by weather conditions, contractors, your agency's experience building that particular type of rocket, and so on. When you go to launch, the game rolls dice behind the scenes. A poor enough roll can result in a critical failure with both rocket and payload destroyed. On the other hand, a very good roll can result in mission bonuses. You can't totally remove risk here, but you can mitigate it. Payload reliability affects the ability to complete the required mission phases while in space. Building certain buildings will allow you to improve various aspects of the mission while waiting for launch, from reliability to the amount of support or research received upon mission completion. The game does model launch windows depending on the mission, so a given month may fall into optimal, suboptimal, or an invalid launch condition. Launching in a suboptimal month will negatively affect launch reliability, so you have to balance whether waiting for an optimal month is worth the lost time and productivity. Mission slots represent how many missions you can have active at one time. You start the game with 1 slot, but can unlock up to 4 more as the game progresses. It's good to have as many slots as possible since typically you want to be running as many missions as you can afford and not leave empty slots. The game features some base building elements. As you research additional buildings, you'll be able to clear out the area around your base and choose the location to build them. Certain building types have adjacency bonuses or penalties, so the game does reward thoughtful placement. Over the course of the game, you'll need a lot of buildings, additional mission control buildings, larger launch pads for bigger rockets, astronaut training facilities, and so on. It's not hard to run out of space, so you do have to be careful with where you put them as well as choosing which buildings to skip. Even with an optimized layout, I don't think it's possible to build every building, but you don't really need to. There's also a small diplomatic component to the game. You have a relationship with the other agencies, ranging from antagonistic to allied. There are events throughout the game which can affect your relationship positively or negatively depending on your choices. You can go on joint missions with other agencies, which allows them to share the mission costs and improves your relationship with them. The default traits for ESA make them particularly suited to playing nice with other agencies, and there is a building that gives even more benefits. If you're playing anybody else, you don't really have to engage with joint missions unless you want to. If you're allied with another agency at the end of the game, you can complete the final mission as a joint one, which is a cool option. The game's mission tree follows a roughly historic track, with early missions involving orbiting artificial satellites around the Earth and Moon, and launching the first animal and then human into space. Mid-game missions involve launching space stations, manned lunar landing, and exploration of more distant planets. Late-game missions involve building a modular space station, what is essentially the ISS, sending Mars rovers, and larger satellites to Earth orbit such as space telescopes. There's a reusable space shuttle for each agency, which the game actually lets you use without astronauts, which is a cool touch, since the Soviet shuttle Buran was actually capable of that. The different agencies get a somewhat different roster of rockets and payloads based on historic or under development projects. Some of the agency differences are basically cosmetic, but some are not. This can affect balance, as we'll get to later. Even when it doesn't really affect gameplay, this attention to detail is great. For example, the game correctly shows the first artificial satellites for all 5 agencies. Playing as each agency will have you relying on their iconic rockets, such as the Long March family for China and the Ariane family for ESA. In the final stages of the game, you'll need to send a series of very heavy and expensive payloads to Mars: a habitat, crewed rover, and eventually a manned crew capsule. To get rockets capable of lifting these payloads, you will basically be required to reach the end of the vehicle tech tree. The progression from the beginning of the game, where you're launching sounding rockets and tiny satellites to Earth orbit, to the end game, where you're launching huge payloads on massive rockets, is pretty cool. Let's talk briefly about UI and graphics. Mars Horizon uses a simple cartoonish art style for both the UI and cutscenes, which I really like. This isn't a AAA title with the budget and resources to pull off photorealistic graphics. The UI is clean and straightforward, showing you the information you need without becoming cluttered. Your main screen shows the date, your funding, research, and upcoming events. Your launched missions, as well as those of other agencies, are also shown tracking in space. Some of the cutscenes border on too basic, but overall I would say the art design and UI in this game is very well executed. Let's talk for a moment about difficulty. Overall, Mars Horizon is a fairly easy game. There are 3 levels of difficulty immediately shown: Explorer, Pioneer, and Veteran. These correspond to easy, normal, and hard. If you click on the Customize Experience button, you can see an additional 2 semi-hidden difficulties: very easy and very hard. These difficulty settings affect research costs, agency income, mission rewards, and vehicle reliability. For new players, I would recommend starting on the normal difficulty if you want a competitive game. Once you figure out the game systems, normal basically becomes a cakewalk, and I would recommend switching to hard or very hard. As we'll get to in a moment, your choice of starting agency and whether or not you choose custom agency traits plays a major factor in difficulty. There is also an Iron Man mode called Iron Core, which can be fun if you find yourself tempted by save scumming. Before we get to the overall conclusion, I have a few criticisms. My largest complaint with this game is the post-launch and mid-mission resource minigame is just not fun. Some long missions will require you to play some variation of this minigame a number of times, and it just never clicked with me. Fortunately, at game launch, there is an option to auto-resolve these. I recommend playing with auto-resolve enabled for all missions unless you somehow enjoy these minigames. Playing with auto-resolve does lose a bit of atmosphere since the game sort of skips a cutscene, but there's just no way I could go back to playing all those minigames. My second criticism has to do with agency balance. Some of the agencies have objectively better base maps, payloads, or rockets. The Chinese agency is the most obvious example of this. They are able to get access to a crewed lunar lander that is massively lighter than any of the other agencies, which basically means the race to the moon is theirs to lose. On the other hand, and this may have been the developer's attempt at balance, the Chinese base building map is horrible to build on. It's covered with rocks which are very expensive to remove and basically forces you to get the advanced demolition upgrade as soon as possible. The Soviet map is also pretty bad in this regard. In contrast, the Japanese map is mostly trees which are much cheaper to build on. If this was an attempt at balancing, it was a strange one and feels more frustrating than balanced. Even with the difficult map, the Chinese agency is still the strongest overall and often the primary AI threat to win the game. As a side note, if the player chooses custom agency settings, it's easy to create an overpowered agency, particularly if you're okay with save scumming. I wouldn't recommend this type of play, but it can be helpful if you're trying to get some of the more difficult achievements. Mission balance is also an issue. Most of the manned missions and the outer planet flybys are not worth the time and expense. Neptune flyby can take a mission slot for the better part of 12 years for limited rewards. If you're playing on very hard, you're better off sticking to unmanned missions in the inner planets until the very late game when you need astronauts for the final Mars mission. My last piece of criticism has to do with the pace of the mid to late game. It can get a bit grindy, just churning out the same missions over and over to get the required research for the Mars projects. The competition with other agencies has also usually fallen off by this point. Either you are so far ahead that no one will catch you, or somebody else is so far ahead you have no chance of catching them. The early game missions have a sort of tension because you can see when other agencies are launching their projects. So you might be in a situation where you have to choose whether to risk a bad weather launch and get to the milestone first and get bonus rewards, or play it safe, wait for better weather, and let somebody beat you to it. The further you get into the game, the less likely you are to see this kind of scenario. Let's talk now about the ongoing support and future of this game. Mars Horizon released in 2020 and has seen a number of patches fixing bugs and adding content. Some of these additions have been based on real-life projects such as the Perseverance Mars rover, the Rosetta mission by ESA, and the addition of a reusable rocket based on the SpaceX Falcon series. There is no DLC or special content apart from a game soundtrack. The last PC patch was in June of 2022, so development of this game has been over for some time. There is a sequel under development, but it does not have a release date as of this video going live. So let's sum all this up. Is Mars Horizon a fun game? Is it worth $20 US? If you have any kind of interest in space exploration or rocketry, you'll probably enjoy this. There are not a lot of releases in this genre. Even with its flaws, this is the kind of game you can play a couple times, put on the shelf, and then come back to in a couple years and play again. There is a demo available. If you try it and enjoy the basic gameplay loop, then you'll probably like the full game. However, if the demo doesn't click with you, definitely give this one a pass. The fundamental experience of the game does not really change from 1957 to the end game. As far as overall value, this game currently retails for $20 US, but it frequently goes on sale down to $6. If you're into this theme, then it's probably worth full price. However, if you're on the fence, I recommend waiting for a sale. At $6, this is a very good value. Anyways, that about wraps this one up. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.